What is up, everyone? I am James Lynch. He is JHK. This is the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast, a show where we take a look at an upcoming notable fight. And on today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at a fight that kind of came out of nowhere last week between Max Holloway and Yair Rodriguez in the featherweight division. Really excited to get into this one. Really high-level fight. But before we get into all that, a couple housekeeping notes. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It's a super easy way to support this channel. And also download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app where you can make your picks. You guys can go toe-to-toe with myself, John, everyone else on the app. It's really the best app out there when it comes to picking fights. So again, doesn't matter if you're iPhone user, Android, doesn't make a difference. You can go there and check it out. John, how are you? How's everything?
Oh, it's all good, man. We don't discriminate. So, get on that app and join our group, Fanatics, Fan Addicts, and compete against us.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into it here. Max Holloway, Yair Rodriguez. We always talk about how we got here. And this is a bit of a weird one, I'll be honest, because I did not think we'd see Max Holloway fight again. And I thought if he was going to fight again, it might be in a different weight class, maybe at lightweight, just to keep himself busy. But the fact that he's taking a featherweight fight and risking a potential title shot again with the winner of Alex Volkanovski and Brian Ortega, I got to give props to him. I know it's Yair Rodriguez, and we'll get into the matchup in a second. I know it does favor Max, but still got to give Holloway props for that. How surprised were you to see this matchup first, John?
Yeah, I was very surprised. Like you said, Max is in a position where he could kind of sit back and wait and see how the division plays out, especially the title fight, right? It's coming up in the fall, most likely in September. And he could have just sat back, trained, did his video game thing and lived his, family life and waited until one of those guys got the belt and then fought either one of them. But he's a fighter, man, and fighters fight, like they always say. And I think he looks at Yair and says, man, Yair's a decent name. He's up there. He's ranked. Why not, welcome him back to the octagon?
Yeah, and props to Max and props to Yair as well. I mean, this is a tough fight for him, but he's ranked very highly. And we'll get into sort of the implications of this as well. Just sort of last thing on this, what's crazy about this fight is this probably wouldn't have happened if Ortega and Volkanovski would have fought on the original date. Of course, Volkanovski got COVID. They ended up pushing the fight, and then they ended up using them as coaches. I mean, there's actually a lot of pieces at play here. If we want to go back even further here, the Ultimate Fighter, they wanted Colby and Masvidal as the coaches, right? That was what the rumors were. It seemed like a no-brainer, a lot of bad blood there, two really big personalities, two guys in the same division. It seemed like that made a lot of sense. For whatever reason, and I've heard various reports, that did not end up happening. We know what happened. Masvidal ended up getting the Usman fight. Colby still without a fight. So there was that hurdle that had to be taken out. And then you've got obviously the COVID stuff as well. So there were a couple of things at play that actually made this fight happen as well. So yeah, a lot of factors going into it. But let's start with the former welterweight champion, Max Holloway, 29 years old, 5'11" with a 69-inch reach, going to be taking on Yair Rodriguez, who's 5'11" with a 71-inch reach. So it's actually interesting. They're the same height. But Max Holloway going to have a little reach disadvantage, only 69 compared to 71 with Yair Rodriguez. Holloway, of course, why is he getting this title shot? Why does he deserve to be in that spot for fighting for the title? It's the beating he put on Calvin Kattar. Like that was we previewed that fight, right? That's a fight where, going in, I think we both sort of felt that, look, it was going to be a close fight, but I mean, Max just absolutely took over that fight, and to do what he did against Calvin Kattar, super impressive. You can't understate that, what he did, especially, coming off that really close fight to Volkanovski before that. He ends up beating Kattar, quite impressively as well. If you look at the last couple fights, yeah, you see some losses on there, but let's go through those real quick, right? Calvin Kattar, complete dominant win. Volkanovski, a lot of people felt like he won that fight. We'll get into the scorecards in a second. The fight before that, UFC 245, which, by the way, the last event I've covered live, that's how long it's been, damn pandemic. But that was a fight where Volkanovski clearly won. I've seen some people go out there and say that Volkanovski, Holloway, that was a close fight and that Holloway could have, no. Sorry, let's stop that talk. Holloway clearly lost that fight. I don't think anyone out there would disagree with that. He beat Edgar before that, and then he lost to Poirier, but that was a short notice fight at lightweight. So can't take too much stock into that. And then the fight before that, he had that absolutely brutal win over, and brutal as in brutal what he did to Brian Ortega, win over Brian Ortega back at UFC 231, another fight I happened to catch live. So again, this guy, and he has 2 wins over Jose Aldo. I mean, you look at the resume here, Aldo twice, Pettis, Jeremy Stevens, Charles Oliveira, in a fight where I actually thought he was kind of, well, actually, no, that was a different fight. But did well in that fight. Cub Swanson. I mean, the resume here. And then, the loss is just McGregor and Volkanovski and Poirier. I mean, you're talking about some of the best fighters of all time. So that's, Max Holloway, great resume, super impressive. Your thoughts on the former champ, John?
Max Holloway made his UFC debut after only 4 fights as a professional. That is crazy. He's like one of those guys that we see coming in now with like maybe 5 or 6 fights, and then they pan out to be this incredible once in a lifetime talent, Max Holloway, right? Max Holloway, like you said, he has a legend's resume, man. He has a resume like Dustin Poirier or who else comes to mind when you think of his resume? You know, Dustin Poirier is like one of the main guys, right? And he is kind of like parallel to that, and I don't know if he's the greatest featherweight of all time, but he's in the talks, he's in the mix. And those losses to Volkanovski, man. If he would have beat Volkanovski and defended the title, I'd feel like he is without a doubt the greatest featherweight of all time. But because of Volkanovski throwing that wrench in there and beating him twice, now Volkanovski's in the talks, right? Him, Aldo, and Holloway. But Holloway, man, if you look at him, yeah, the 2 fights that really were impressive were the Ortega fight and the Kattar fight, because it was just like complete dominance, right? Just outclassed in every single way, and he was in this state of flow. And one thing that I think people don't want to pay respects to Volkanovski enough is because Volkanovski interrupted all of that, right? Like he was, like he takes some time to get it, in rhythm, right? But Volkanovski broke all that down in his 2 fights against Max Holloway. But other than that, man, Max Holloway has been pretty flawless. There's the Poirier loss, and he took a pretty good beating himself in that fight. But man, it's a legend's resume, man. And he gets to add to that if he beats Rodriguez, because Rodriguez is one of the biggest talents in this division right now.
Absolutely. Just a couple more things on Holloway, and then we'll move on to Yair Rodriguez. I mentioned the Alex Volkanovski fight, the rematch they had at UFC 251. Looking at MMA decisions right now, majority of media members scoring that fight for Holloway. There was this is one of the few fights that had I think more than 20 people go. I'm still counting here. What is it? 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm still counting 9 people scoring the fight for Volkanovski. Here's the thing. That fight wasn't a robbery. I know a lot of people want to throw that word out there. To me, a robbery is you didn't win a single round of the fight. Diego Sanchez and Ross Pearson is a robbery. This was not a robbery. I think we can all agree Volkanovski at least won one, maybe 2 rounds. And then also, some of those rounds were close, right? You have to go back and look at sort of the overall round. You can't just look at certain things that happen, because people always bring up that I think Holloway dropped him in one of the rounds, but I think Volkanovski actually ended up with more volume. So there's things like that make it a little bit interesting. It was you can say it's a close fight without it being a robbery. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So I remember scoring the fight for Volkanovski at the time. I got a lot of crap for it, but hey, that's what close fights are. And regardless, you got to go out there and make a decisive performance there and get the win. So again, some people feel like he's won. And, we talked about Volkanovski as well. There's some outlets, not going to mention any names here, that sort of call Holloway the young crown champ. I don't just necessarily disagree with that, but I think that's also very disrespectful to Volkanovski. He might be one of the most disrespected champs. You look at him beating Aldo, him beating Holloway. He's got a lot of impressive wins on that resume, and I don't think he gets enough credit either. So that's sort of the last thing on Max Holloway as well. And like I said, the 2 wins over Aldo look even better now. Aldo's still winning fights at his age, which he isn't even that old. He's just old in fight years. But some really good wins on the resume of Max Holloway. And again, he is the favorite in this fight, and with good reason. But let's move along to Yair Rodriguez now. His opponent, 13-2 record, 28 years old, so a little bit younger than Holloway, who is 31, I believe. Sorry, 29. So actually, no, I forgot that Max is still that young. He's only 29. That's crazy. So Max is 29, Rodriguez 28. Rodriguez 5'11", 71 in reach. So, physically kind of similar, age-wise kind of similar, but in terms of experience, Max Holloway has a lot more experience. 28 fights compared to just 15 for Rodriguez. And here's the thing I want to emphasize here with Yair Rodriguez. As good as he's been, John, a lot of inactivity, right? If you look at this, early in his career, he was fine. He was fighting about twice a year if you look at the overall resume here. But, since 2018, he fought, twice in 2019, didn't fight at all last year. And even in 2019, there were some gaps. He only fought once in 2018. There were some injuries. There was some USADA stuff in between there. Actually, the latest thing, which is ridiculous, is he didn't give his whereabouts. So USADA suspended him. I talked to Tyson Chartier about this last night. You get 3 chances, and then if you get 3 strikes, then they suspend you. So it's like, either you're really disorganized, you have bad management, or all of the above. I don't know. But it's like, how do you mess that up, especially when you're in the prime of your career? Because he's coming off the win over Jeremy Stephens in his last fight, which is a very decisive win. Of course, the fight before that was a controversial no contest accidental eye poke that happened 15 seconds into that fight, which was a legit eye poke. You could see Jeremy Stephens is as tough as it gets. I also remember fans back then saying, oh, Stephens wanted out. This is a guy who's fought like everyone. Like, Jeremy Stephens is not a scared or want out type fighter. So there's that as well. got the revenge against Stevens in the fight after that. It was supposed to fight Yair Rodriguez, it was supposed to fight Zabit Magomedsharipov last year, but then he had a fractured ankle. So some bad luck as well. But like I said, a lot of inactivity on top of that. The fight before that, which is something I know you're going to talk about, Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, was a fight he was losing, John. I mean, I think, that's one thing that kind of gets lost in that fight. You do see a knockout win for Yair Rodriguez in that fight, but had Zombie held on literally a second later, he wins that fight, right? We all know the knockout, the elbow is one of the best knockouts in UFC history. So if you want to know a Hail Mary equivalent in MMA, it's that. It's like Volkov and Derek Lewis, same sort of thing. So again, can't put too much stock into that win because he was losing that. Now, the Frankie Edgar fight was key because that was a fight that kind of has some vibes to this fight as well, right? Where, Yair, undefeated at the time, had beaten BJ Penn, Caceres, beat Andre Fili, actually finished Andre Fili in that fight. Also had a win over Dan Hooker, which looks really good now. But you remember that Edgar fight, he got completely outclassed. Like, it was a complete one-sided beatdown dominant performance. And everyone's like, okay, like, he's not at that level yet. But then, racks up a couple wins, and now people sort of have seemingly forgot about that. So I do bring up the Edgar fight because this kind of has a similar vibe. I know Rodriguez is much more improved. I know he's older. I'm sure he's much more, improved in terms of overall skill set, and he's ranked very high. I mean, rankings wise, this fight makes sense. But if you look at what Holloway did in his last fight to Cater, you do kind of have some of those vibes here with him, with the Edgar fight. So your thoughts on Yair Rodriguez?
Yeah, the biggest concern that I look at with Yair is, like you said, that inactivity, man. He only fought once in 2019. He says he fought twice, but it's the same guy. It's basically the continuation of the first fight, right? And then before that, 2018, he fought the Korean Zombie, and that was one of the greatest knockouts of all time. That was like one of those heart rip that just ripped your heart out if you're a Korean Zombie fan, right? Because the Korean Zombie, he did what he was known for until the last second, and he got knocked out in the last second, which was very impressive by Yair. Yeah, and also I didn't realize that Zabit was supposed to fight Yair in 2018, so that was the second fight that was canceled between these two.
Right.
That's interesting. And
another injury for Rodriguez. So injuries have bit him a bit. I mean, I'll give him some credit. That's not something you can really control sometimes. But the inactivity is really sort of slowed him down a lot in terms of where you remember. This is a guy that I remember when he beat Charles Rosa. People were like, okay, this is the guy that's going to, cause some disruption. And, he's had, like I said, just the one setback against Edgar, but you do wonder where his ceiling is at this point.
Yeah. And also maybe, like you said, he was suspended last year. And man, it's coming up on almost 2 years when he does actually step into the octagon against Max Holloway. We don't even know what type of Yair Rodriguez is going to return against Max, man. There's a lot of mystery. We know what Max is going to do. We've seen Max, he's been fighting. He's continuously, right? So we know his capability. Yair, he's a question mark heading into this fight. And maybe that's a good thing or maybe that's a bad thing. But you mentioned that Frankie Edgar fight. He goes in there, a lot of hype, just, very similar to what it is heading into this fight. And he just gets taken down and mauled by Frankie Edgar. And you don't know, Max might do the same exact thing. You know what I mean? You don't know, but that's why they're going to fight. We're going to find out, right? With Yair, man. Yair, I still think he's one of the best in the division. It doesn't matter if he took 2 years off. Brian Ortega took 2 years off.
Exactly, and he looked amazing against.
He looked amazing against the Korean Zombie. It seems like the Korean Zombie is the guy that just gets styled on by everybody. I don't know. It sucks.
Yeah. And it's funny. Someone had like a poll question on Twitter the other day, like, what is the worst beating you've seen in the octagon? I mean, that Yair and Edgar fight was up there. It's got to be up there. I mean, and you could put Max's performance against Calvin the same thing. Like, I've talked about this before, and I have a lot of respect for Tyson Chartier. That's a fight you could have easily thrown in the towel for Cater. Like, he was not coming back to win. We've never seen Calvin Kattar get a late finish. I get it as a coach with everything that's on the line of what's in there, but that fight could have easily been, that could have easily been a TKO win for Max Holloway with the beating that Kattar took. He's just a tough guy, and he's really tough to put out. So again, Max, I think, showing that he has improved tremendously, and also that he's one of those guys too that doesn't need to be at a big camp. He's in Hawaii. I know he's been training with Yancy Medeiros. Like, he's not at a camp that's really like a super camp, like an American Top Team or something like this, but he's still getting it done. So, and even more impressive is the fact that, there's been restrictions. He hasn't had the type of training he likes. So now, from what I understand, just talking to Yancy actually a couple of weeks ago, is that has been sort of fixed a little bit. So they're getting a bit better training out there. So we'll see. But again, lots of time for this fight, July 17th. So, plenty of time for both guys to have their camps. By the way, Rodriguez, one more sort of footnote, been training a lot with Donald Cerrone. I don't know if that's like his official camp. He is based out of Chicago, I believe. Valley Flow Striking. I know that's where his home base is. But he does go down and train with Cowboy Cerrone as well. So we'll see if that, helps him. I'm curious if Cowboy will be in his corner. I know for Cowboy's fight camp with the fight against Alex Morono, he was there. So yeah, we'll be keeping tabs on that in terms of the camps as well. All right, let's get to the pick here. We might as well get the odds too, Mike, if we have them. I don't know if we do, but I'm assuming, oh, there we go, minus 400. Okay, so some people might say that's a little steep. I don't. I think Rodriguez will put up a better fight than, say, the Edgar fight, so to speak. But how can you pick against Max Holloway here? Again, people thought he beat Volkanovski. And even if he didn't, he still gave Volkanovski a pretty close fight, which speaks in itself with how good Volkanovski is. You got the beating over Kattar. Like, no one's beat Kattar like that. Kattar's lost before. Renato Moicano beat him a few years ago. People forget that. But this was a beating. And then you just look at the fact that Holloway's been more active. He's even, if you look at who he's fought, you look at the resumes, let's just quickly compare that even. Like, no offense to Jeremy Stevens, who's, kind of on the tail of his career. Korean Zombie's at a crossroads fight. Edgar is, at bantamweight now. You look at some of these wins, other than Hooker maybe. I mean, these are not great wins, whereas Holloway, you look at this, I mean, maybe next to like an RDA or Poirier, like this is an unreal resume. Kattar, Volkanovski twice, Edgar, Poirier, Ortega, Aldo, Pettis, even Lama Stevens, like, and even before that, Oliveira, like, just the resumes are not even close. Holloway has fought far better competition here. So I'll say this. I think Holloway's going to win. I think the big question is, can he finish? It's going to be a 5-round fight, if I'm not mistaken, right? I believe this is a main event. Let me just double check that. Yeah, it is a 5-round fight. I think it's likely that Holloway finishes, but saying that, Rodriguez only been finished, I think just the one time by Edgar. I don't know. On the regional scene, he had a loss. I'm not sure if that was an actual stoppage or not, but I think Holloway finishes this time. I think he gets it done. And I think he goes out there and looks impressive. Now, look, I'm not completely writing Yair Rodriguez. He definitely could be a Brian Ortega situation where he comes back and he looks amazing. And we were all wrong because of the last Yair we saw. And it was a good win over Jeremy Stevens. But saying that, had Rodriguez gone out there and, say, finished Stevens in the first round or did like what Kattar did to Stevens, then I'd be a little bit better about him in this fight. But it's just like he beat Stevens by decision. I mean, Stevens is not even in the weight class anymore. It doesn't look like that great of a win. And he beat Zombie at the last minute. We've seen Zombie finish before. Holloway's not been finished. That is one thing to his credit. It's in that Hawaiian blood. You just can't you can't finish these guys, right? So that's going to be another challenge. Like, you look at when he beat the biggest win of his career, we can all agree, is Korean Zombie. That was the last second win. That's not going to happen against Holloway. At least I don't think that'll happen. So I'm going Max Holloway. I'll go 4th round finish. I think he wears out Rodriguez. Rodriguez is going to be so tired, the lack of activity, everything. Holloway's going to be fresh as a daisy. Goes out there and finishes him in the 4th round. Who do you like in this one? How do you think they get it done?
When you look at Rodriguez in his past, right, I believe he's only had one 5-round fight, which was against the Korean Zombie, and he was spent. You know what I mean? He was barely, I think he collapsed like after he got the knockout, right? He was just barely hanging on. And we've never seen Max like that. Max is just full of energy throughout the whole fight. It doesn't matter where it is. It could be the 1st round or the 5th round. With Yair, that is, if it was a 3-round fight, I could possibly sway towards Yair, right? Because Max does take some time to get started, and Yair's actually a quick starter, in my opinion, right? And he's a much more dynamic striker than Max Holloway. I don't know. That's my opinion. Some people might not agree, but I feel like he has the more dynamic striking. He throws from different angles compared to Max. Max is more of a technical striker, right? He's like more straightforward. With Yair, man, he's throwing kicks. He's throwing like switch kicks. He's throwing all kinds of wild stuff, right? Knees, that upward elbow that he knocked out the Korean Zombie with, right? We don't ever see that from Max. What's the most dynamic finish Max has had? Maybe a submission. That's about it, right?
I'm trying to go back. Yeah, there hasn't been, nothing super flashy or anything like that, right?
Yeah, so if it's early in the fight, I could see Yair going out there and just putting it on Max, trying to get him while he's trying to get started and throw some wild, crazy techniques at him. But then if that doesn't work, he's just going to get tired, and then Max is going to take over. And like you said, Max is tough. He has that Hawaiian chin, and right now I think he's clicking. I think he's better than he was when he was beating up Aldo for the title.
Easily.
Right now, I think he's better than that. And I think Rodriguez is beating Max at the wrong moment, especially with the 2-year layoff. All of those factors coming in, Max is going to get a finish, dude. He's going to get in there 4th, 5th round. I think he's going to knock him out. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. If we do want to look at one kryptonite of Max Holloway, it might be, submission losses, right? Poirier submitted him years ago. That is one thing to consider. But again, you look at Rodriguez, not much of a ground game. His last submission win was back on the Ultimate Fighter back in 2014. I mean, it just does not happen too often. By the way, you're talking about his dynamic striking. That head kick knockout over Andre Fili is a good example of that. If you haven't watched that fight, go back and watch that.
Switch
and
kick,
that was
right?
it. That was it. Yeah, and that was an interesting fight too, because if you remember at the time, it was kind of a prospect versus who's the better prospect fight, and obviously Rodriguez came through that in flying colors. So yeah, that's why he's ranked so high, and that's why he is where he is. And it'll be interesting.
Yeah, Max, man, he's just clicking, dude. It's clicking, and that's why I really want to see the Volkanovski trilogy fight.
Well,
If
he's
he
got to get
gets,
past Ortega. We'll see.
yeah, he's gotta get
first,
past
yeah.
Ortega, but I feel like Ortega's gonna end up fighting Max again. I feel like Rodriguez is gonna end up fighting Volkanovski or Ortega eventually. You know what I mean? I think these guys are gonna be fighting each other for the next couple of years. Then the belt is most likely going to be switching back and forth somehow, right? Because they're so good and they're all in their prime. And if you look at their ages, they're pretty close to each other, right? Yair is the youngest, I believe, and Volkanovski is the oldest. And and they're all pretty much near each other. So I'm excited for this division just with those four guys fighting each other.
And then there's also the possibility of guys moving up, right? Like there's some exciting matchups at 155. So I think you could see a lot of variety in both divisions sort of going forward, 155 and 145. So that's good to know. So anyways, if you missed it there, we're both going Max Holloway in this fight. I think he gets a pretty decisive finish. Well, I mean, it's obviously decisive if he finishes it, but you get what I'm saying. I think it's going to be, even if it does go the distance, I think Holloway gets a decisive win. There'll be no questions. I think he gets it done. But I will say, Yair will show better than, say, a plus 300. I think I'll look, if I had to cap this, now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, I might go 3 or maybe a 2-1 favorite for Holloway. Well, no, I can't go 2-1. I go 3-1. 4-1. I get where people are coming from, but I think Rodriguez will look a little bit better than we've seen him in the past. That's just my hunch, and that's a big hunch to go off of. All right, let's get to questions. We got lots of time for questions, everyone, as we usually do. This is a preview show and then a Q&A. We're going to start first with Antoine. I think I said your name wrong last time. My apologies if I did that. It's Antoine. He says, I feel like a lot of people are not giving Yair enough credit for his durability and versatility with his arsenal. I have Max, but I think Yair is really going to come at him unlike Kattar. Yeah, like John suggested, I think we both kind of agree with that. I think Yair's game plan will to be getting Holloway's face and take away that flow that he has early on, take him out of his element and try and just go for the kill. That's what you have to do against Max Holloway. You can't let Max get comfortable. Otherwise he's going to, turn you into a punching bag. Right. So
yeah, we've seen that a few times.
Great question here. Who wins Usman versus Wonderboy and why? I'll start with you first, John. Who do you think wins that?
That's a hard one, but I'm gonna have to go with Usman. Usman is at this point in his career where he's getting better in every title fight, and when the guy is getting better during his title reign, it's hard to pick against him, even against a dynamic striker like Wonderboy. I could see Usman even like knocking out Wonderboy in a fight, like in a title fight. You know what I mean? But you never can count out Wonderboy, man. That guy, he's durable. He's dynamic with his striking. He's just, I hate to pick in this fight, man, because I like Wonderboy so much, and I feel like he deserves the fight against Usman, but it might not ever happen.
Yeah, Wonderboy is a prime example. I'm just looking up the records here in case people are thinking I'm not paying attention. I am. I'm just looking up the records here. But no, Wonderboy is the prime example of, you can't necessarily factor in age, right? Because he's still competing at a high level. I will say this. I think Wonderboy is one of the few fighters who can defeat Usman in that division, because I think he poses an interesting threat where I think his takedown defense has gotten a lot better. His striking is definitely different than anything Usman's fought. Like Usman's never fought a karate guy, right? So there's that. And then just, you look at sort of overall, and when we did preview this fight a while back, it's interesting to just see, how well he's competed and not taken a lot of damage in his career. That's one thing I've talked to him about as well. Not that Usman has either, but that's still sort of a factor in this fight. But if I'm picking, I'm going Usman, and it's mainly just because aside from being a little bit younger, he's not that much younger. He's 34, Thompson 38, only a 4-year age cap. It's that Usman's fast. His striking's coming along really well. He's always got the wrestling in his back pocket. And he's got power. I mean, to go out there and knock out a Masvidal, knock out a Burns. Like, I don't even know if Wonderboy's going to knock out Burns, right? Like, if you look at a lot of his wins, they're decision wins, which, some of the guys he's fighting are very durable. But I do point that out just with the simple fact that, it's not like he's a power puncher per se. And Wonderboy does have that loss to Pettis, which I don't want to use the word fluke, but I mean, it's very, like, I think 9 times out of 10 they fight, Wonderboy wins that fight. It was just it's one of those crazy things that happens. But yeah, I think I'd have to pick Usman in that fight. But saying that, I think Wonderboy is one of the few guys that has the tools to defeat Usman.
When you look at Wonderboy's Wonderboy. We don't really see nothing else out of him except for what we've seen throughout the years. Usman shows a different level, a different layer every single fight, and that's why I would pick Usman. But if Usman fought Wonderboy like 3 years ago, that's a different
Much
situation,
different
man.
fight. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
activity, we should mention that as well. Thompson has
Mhm.
not fought that much. He fought Jeff Neal in December. He fought Luque in November of 2019. Like he's been off, like he hasn't been as active as he likes. And you know what? He gets hurt a lot. You know,
Mhm.
that's the reason why he hasn't been back in a lot. I know the latest thing that he had, I think it was I don't know what injury it was exactly, but again, it kept him out from December onwards. Like I know he wanted, for example, I think he wanted the Leon Edwards fight, but then he couldn't fight because he was injured. Right when I think it was when Chimaev was out, he was injured. He couldn't take it. So those are situations as well that are holding him back. But again, he's fighting Gilbert Burns. Hopefully, we'll see how that one goes. But we both, I think, took Wonderboy in that fight. Should Amanda fight Shevchenko next? Well, Amanda's fighting Juliana Pena coming up in July, right? Is that that fight's in July if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Yeah, so she got to get past Pena. I think she will. Spoiler alert. Oh no, sorry, that's actually in August 7th. Man, that's a ways away. So yeah, she got to get past her, and then you know what? Like, I wouldn't put it past them maybe looking at, say, like if Aspen Ladd is just sort of the wild card in that division, if she goes out there and demolishes Macy Chasson, which we'll see, that's a very interesting fight. Don't be surprised if Aspen maybe gets a title shot or is close to it. And you know, just because of her record, she's got the one loss to Duran to me. She's looked pretty good outside of that. She might be a wild card in that as well. And for Shevchenko, I think, and she's even said this when I interviewed her, I think it's pretty certain that she's going to fight the winner of Murphy and Calderwood, right?
Mhm.
And I know people don't want it. You know, people are like, oh, well, it's just another win for Valentina. Well, look, they still have to fight people in your division. You can't just jump around. So I would like to see the trilogy, though, saying that, but I don't think it's going to happen next. I
You
think
see, that's what they said when Chris Weidman fought Anderson Silva. Another win for Anderson Silva. That's what they said when Holly Holmes fought Ronda Rousey. Another win for, you know, there's going to be someone that comes along that's going to beat her, catch her on the wrong night, man. It's going to eventually happen. Will it happen? Do I think it will? I don't think so, but I'm just saying it could happen. You know, I mean, you never know with fighting. And the question is, will they fight? I think they should fight this year. I think they should fight at the end of this year while they could put it together. If Amanda gets past Juliana Pena, which most likely she will, and Shevchenko takes on the winner of Murphy and Calderwood, that sets it up for like a December matchup, right? Champion versus champion at at bantamweight. I think that would be perfect, right? And then it starts the new year. You never know if Shevchenko wins, she'd be a double champ, man. Like, why would the UFC not like that?
Let's go back to Antoine. He says, do you guys think Yair may have made improvements rather than Rust, especially training with John Jones and Cowboy? I don't think Calvin has the arsenal to match Max. I think Yair kicks and chin will show. It's possible, but again, we're just taking a guess here. We don't know. I mean, you could, I love how people try and like analyze stuff on social media. Like that doesn't really tell us too much, right? So, we don't know. I mean, I think it's entirely possible. I would think he's improved. Again, when you're not taking, sometimes it can be a blessing, like what we saw with Ortega, right? Maybe he needed that time to make some adjustments. But I don't know if we're going off anything what Yair looked in his last fight. I have to put Max here.
Yeah, with Yair too. Who's he training? Is Cowboy his coach? Like, who's his coach? Like when you make adjustments, when you transform your style, you usually have a coaching staff behind you, right? But Yair, it's kind of a mystery, right? It's like he trains with Cowboy. He's at this academy in Chicago. I believe he goes down to Mexico a lot at some facility. I've seen Cowboy down there with him, a few times. But other than that, I don't know. I don't know what he's working on. And yeah, I hope he's better. I hope he comes out and gives Max Holloway the fight of his life, man, and shows us that he's the dark horse, so to say, in that division. But I don't know, man. I don't see that happening.
We can ignore that next question. That guy, for whatever reason, comes on every chat and trolls people. And we'll get to Antoine, who's actually a good commenter. He says, on another topic, do you think Stipe putting on 20, 30 pounds for the trilogy with Francis will help? He ate a lot of shots that people can't in the second fight, but will the weight ultimately help Stipe? Is there any sort of evidence of that if you put on more weight? Like, I don't know if that's even a thing. We're clearly not doctors. I can't really speak to that. I'm not a coach, obviously, either. I don't know. If anything, like, I think I don't think the weight was that big of a thing. Like, I think if anything, if you're lighter, you're going to be faster. Right. But I think Francis, I don't know. I don't know. Stipe's got to do a lot because he got outclassed in the rematch, and he's got to make a lot of changes. And I think this might be one of the cases. And I know I sort of counteracted that point earlier by what I said about Max Holloway, but I think this might be a case where if Stipe needs to make the adjustments, he might have to go elsewhere to do it. Maybe go to an AKA, go somewhere just to get some different tools and see if he can beat Francis, because whatever he was doing was not the answer for Francis, and he got absolutely outclassed in that fight. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Oh man, I don't think the weight matters, to be honest with you. I think that it's just studying the film and
Mm.
going in there into the lab with his coaches. I don't even think he needs to go anywhere. I think he has a good coaching staff around him, that is kind of tailor made for him in particular, and he brings in training partners. So I just think that what Stipe was saying in his recent interviews about like he knows his mistakes, he knows what he needs to do. And yeah, and I think I'm a proponent right now. I think they should fight right away. With all this like delaying, and Derek Lewis is gonna fight, but they don't know if Derek Lewis is gonna fight. He hasn't signed any contracts. John Jones is in limbo because he wants more money. I just say give Stipe the trilogy fight next, man. Just let them fight each other. Set the date and do it. If Derek Lewis is not going to step in, I don't understand what's the big holdup. Ngannou needs to build off the title win, right? So what's the
Mm.
best way to do it is to beat who everybody considers the baddest UFC heavyweight of all time, right? Which is Stipe. So you should do it, man. I don't know. I think that should happen, that fight.
Let's get to James says, how would you set the odds for Jones versus Ngannou if it ever happens? Great question. I think you go like minus 150 Francis. I would favor Francis there just because he's fought at heavyweight. You look at the win he got over Stipe in his last fight. I think that's definitely something to that you'd sort of look at when it comes to all that. So there you go. That's what I think. What do you think about the odds?
Yeah, man, I'm not really a big like odds guy, so but I do believe Francis should be favored if they do have some odds. 200 wouldn't be that bad. Minus 200.
What else do we got here? We got Roman says Yair will shock everyone. Well, Roman, I love the going against the grain here, but how's he going to do it? That's what I always ask people. People are like, oh, this guy's going to win. Well, let's hear it. How do you think he's going to win, Roman? Let's hear that as well. Let's get to Jake. He says, I can see Strickland and Allen staying in the top 10 in the future. Well, they're both relatively young. These guys hate each other, man. I just interviewed Brendan Allen the other day. I was just kind of like, curious to see what the latest is. And he's like, look, if I ever see Sean Strickland, I will slap him. And he sort of went into detail about how I guess Strickland said something about his kid or something. I don't know, kind of cross the line. Strickland's a pretty off the wall guy. I mean, I've interviewed him, but I don't remember him saying that. I would hope that he didn't say that because that's should be off limits. But I think that's a rematch that's going to happen at some point. Not any. Brandon wants it right away. That's not going to happen. He got destroyed in that fight, but a couple more wins and maybe if the stars align, we'll see what happens there.
But Strickland, man, he looks good right now. Like that's why they're giving him that Uriah Hall fight because he looks so good, right? Compared to Allen, and there's two totally different styles too. I think if Allen got Strickland to the ground, it'd be a different story, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Allen does have a win over Kevin Holland, so that's kind of interesting as well if you think about it as well. What else do we got here? What's next for Da Un Jung? I'll let you take this one, John. What do you think is next for him?
You know what kind of annoys me about like the Korean fighters or just even Asian fighters in general is they don't call fighters out. They just say like,
Is that a culture thing, do you think? And not to make a blanket statement like that, but do you think that's
but the thing is like you got to go with the worldwide culture of fighting. And the worldwide culture of fighting is whenever you get out there, you get on the mic, you need to take advantage of it. And Korean fighters, they don't ever. I interview these guys. I interviewed Talon Jung many times, all the other Korean fighters. The only fighter I've never interviewed is the Korean Zombie, right? It's just like untouchable or something. But other than that, man, like these guys, I try to get them to like, I even talk to them, like, hey, this is a different world, man. The UFC is not like local MMA. It's not regional MMA. You have to like scream from the rooftops if you want something. That's how it works. But they just don't want to do it, man. It's just maybe they just don't want to listen to me. I don't know. But for Daun Jung, I think he should fight. I don't know, man. He's on a winning streak. He hasn't lost a fight in the UFC. I think he's like 3-0 and one draw with Sam Alvey. So he should fight another prospect. I don't think he should jump into that top 15, especially at light heavyweight. He's still developing. So why don't you just let him develop and let him just fight, a guy coming up in the division. I don't know exactly in that light heavyweight division the main prospects. Can you name any that you've recently interviewed?
Like prospects that you mean that that he could fight in that weight class?
Yeah.
None really coming to mind right now. I'm just looking at the rankings. It's tough. That whole division's kind of like it's still top heavy. It's been like that for years, where you have some really good guys at the top, and then after that, it's kind of like no man's land. Maybe like no, it wouldn't really make sense in the rankings, but like Ryan Spann, I think needs an opponent. Maybe Misha Serkinov. He's kind of fallen off a bit, right? That might make sense.
What Talon Jung always told me that his dream fight is to take on Gustafsson.
Mhm. Oh,
So
there you go. Well, and
maybe,
apparently he's coming back a light heavyweight, right?
yeah,
So,
so maybe they could do it.
remember Tanner Bozer, I think, was linked to a fight with Gustafsson. He mentioned that.
Yeah, that's
Remember?
right. That's
Yeah,
right.
and then apparently it didn't work out. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Let's get to biggest dark horse in the UFC.
Man, that's a very broad question. I think the biggest dark horse in the UFC right now, this is just me, Rafael Fiziev. I think he's the biggest. I think in that stacked lightweight division, that guy is the most dangerous, and he hasn't even shown everything that he can do yet.
Yep,
So,
I'll
and
go
his
with Fiziev
wrestling
as
is
well.
good. His
Yeah.
wrestling is good. His submissions are good. He just doesn't need to use it because he's a striker, right? So, I would have loved to see him take on like someone like Islam, a guy that's grappling heavy, to see if he could get past him. I think that's a good matchup, actually,
Mhm.
for his next fight.
Let's get to Euro. He says FanDuel has Bones at plus 155, Francis minus 188. So it's pretty close. Francis, I would imagine on most books will be the favorite. So I don't think there's any questions there. Let's get to Antoine again. He says, do you guys think Francis can become the GOAT? He has two huge names on his resume in Jones and Stipe. I'm always hesitant with the GOAT. My thing with the GOAT thing is, and maybe, I think we've talked about this before, but to me, it's about title defenses. Francis just got the title and people want to call him the GOAT. I know he's fought some tough guys leading up to his title fight, but I would like to see a couple more title defenses before we start using the G word. That's just me personally. I know people have different, sort of criteria when it comes to that, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
GOAT is many different things, right? It's title defenses, it's maybe 2 division champ, and your reign of supremacy, right?
Mhm.
Your reign of supremacy. Like how long did you fight at the top? You know what I mean? And stayed there and competed with the best of the best. Francis is just getting started, man. I don't understand how people could even mention the word GOAT around him. That baffles my mind.
Because it's recency bias. It's like everyone's quick to. It's like Usman. Usman's better than GSP of all time. Well, no, GSP had how many title defenses? Like these are things that people just seem to ignore when it comes to like the history of the sport. So I'm more about the title defenses and the longevity as a champion, as opposed to how you got there. Because some fighters had an easier path than others to get a title shot. So there you go. Let's get to Jose Flores. He says, what happened to Emmett? I think he will fight someone below him. Emmett had a really bad injury after the Burgos fight. I'm not sure what's next for him. I did ask, I was kind of seeing if Tyson Chartier, when I had him last night on my podcast, I was just curious to get his thoughts on a potential opponent for Calvin. They mentioned Arnold Allen, which I would understand. I think that's a good fight for both guys. He also said maybe if the Zombie wins, that could be a fight they could do as well, just in terms of the rankings. So they didn't mention Emmett, but I think Emmett might be a dark horse in that division. He's older, but he's still getting a lot of good wins. He's another guy that beat Shane Burgos, which is, we saw what Barbosa did. I mean, that was a very impressive win for Emmett. So I think Emmett will get any one of those guys I just mentioned, whether it's Cater, Arnold Allen, Korean Zombie, maybe Ige if he wins. I don't know. I think Ige might be ahead if he gets a win, but we'll see. But he's right in the middle of the pack right there.
Yeah, I think he probably end up getting the loser of Dan Ige versus the Korean Zombie. It might line up perfectly. I don't know. I haven't spoke with Josh Emmett since earlier this year because he was in the middle of rehab or starting rehab after the surgery. But I know that he kind of had some stumbling blocks along the way. When was the last time you talked to him?
Who? Cater?
Emmett.
Oh, Emmett. He was on my podcast with Jim West. We had him on earlier this year. I want to say it was maybe around February, around there.
Yeah.
And it sounded like things were going according to plan, but I think the plan was always for him to come back either in the late summer or something like that. I think was what I remember correctly. So
yeah, I remember him telling me late like fall or earliest summer, but in the fall or even in the winter of this year. So we'll see what happens with Emmett. But yeah, I think he has so many fights, man, and he always has that knockout power, dude. That's never gonna go away.
Let's go to Jose Flores again. He's talking about Strickland. How does he do against Hall? That's a really interesting fight because both guys are pretty wild in terms of what they do. And, I do wonder, I don't know if they've trained together, but I know Strickland's trained at both Syndicate and Extreme. I know Hall was at Extreme Couture, so I'm not sure if they ever got to train together. That would be a good question for Eric Nixick if I get a chance to speak to him on the next little bit. But I think Strickland does well. I think it's a 50-50 fight. I do. I think Hall certainly proved his worth. You can't take anything away from the last fight against Weidman. It was just a weird, literally the first kick or whatever, and it ends the fight. But prior to that, he knocked out Anderson Silva. That's pretty good because Silva's a pretty durable guy. You look at some of the wins before that. Hall seems like he's turned a corner with Fortis, and Strickland as well seems like he's in the right weight class now at middleweight, and to do what he did to Brandon Allen, very impressive. So 50-50 fight. I might give a slight edge to Hall, but even saying that, he's a little bit older, so I don't know. I think I give a slight edge to Hall, though, just based off level of competition.
And I'm just wondering if Strickland's gonna get under the skin of Hall ahead of this fight. That's the thing that I'm waiting for.
That's
'Cause,
true, yeah.
Hall does react to those types of things, and it could have an effect on him even inside that cage. But if you look at skill for skill, man, Strickland it seems like he's on this upward trajectory, and Hall is on the same trajectory, just a little bit older and a little bit maybe war torn, like he's been through a lot more, wars, not a lot more. He's been hit a lot more, I believe, in his fights compared to Strickland. And yeah, so I'd give the edge to Hall, but man, I wouldn't be surprised if Strickland goes in there and they go strike for strike and Strickland knocks him out.
Radical Rosh says, did Max lose his chin? He seems to react badly to big shots against Dustin. Yair may sleep him in round 1. He says, yeah, no, I don't think, the Poirier fight was kind of a weird one because like Max didn't look great in that fight, but then he looked fine like after that. Like, I don't know. I think I don't think Yair's, first off, how many first round finishes does Yair Rodriguez have? I don't think he has any. Like, not in the UFC, none that I can remember, at least recently. Let me just look this up. So the first round knockout thing, you're talking about a guy who's never been finished. I don't think that's happening. He finished a guy in tough, Rubio Perez. No first round finishes. So, and I guess, the Stevens fight was an eye poke, so you can't take anything away from that. And then, Holloway's never been finished, including fighting like guys like McGregor. So no, I don't think Yair's going to sleep him at all if he wins. I think more likely if Yair wins, it would be a decision, maybe like a controversial decision or something, but I don't disagree with Max reacting badly. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think so. We're way past that, right? How many fights ago was that? That was like 4 or 5 fights
I know,
ago.
and it was at lightweight too. So,
Yeah.
and then again, who knows what Max headspace was in at that as well. So there we go. Jose Flores, if I was a top lightweight after a big win, I would call Justin, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Yeah. I see what you're getting at. Is that crossing the line? I wouldn't. Okay. Listen, my thing with trash talk is leave family out of it. You can say whatever you want about, quitting or whatever, like people going after Sterling for saying he's faking or whatever. Like that's fair game, right? You can say whatever you want on that stuff, but you start bringing in kids and your wives, that's where you're kind of crossing the line, in my opinion, or religion in the case of Connor and things like that. That's where you're going to run into trouble. So I'm all for trash talk. I just think there's a way you can do it where it doesn't have to cross that line. So I agree with you in terms of trash talk. That's sort of what I think. So.
Yeah, there's a way to trash talk. There's an art to it, right? And then when you start getting desperate, that's when you start talking about people's families and their religion, and that's what Connor did. He got desperate, right? You noticed it. You knew that he was getting into something that he couldn't handle, and he went there. So, what can you do, man? You're gonna make money off of it, but still, you gotta live with the consequences of that.
If I who's the best lightweight right now? Well, I'm gonna give the safe answer and go Charles Oliveira because he's the champ.
Yes, but then Dustin Poirier's out there too, man. So.
I think him and Poirier 1-1A at this point.
Yeah,
as far as I'm
for
concerned.
sure.
Roman says they should have booked Holland versus Strickland instead of Hall versus. Sorry, they should have booked Holland versus Strickland instead of Hall. You mean Hall against Strickland? Okay, yeah. No, but the thing is though, Holland's coming off a couple losses, right? So it's like, what value is that to Strickland? I get where you're coming from like the style perspective and all that other stuff, but. Strickland's earned his billing against a guy like Hall because of the fact that, he's got some nice wins since moving up to middleweight. So I think he should be rewarded for that. So I get what you're saying, but you got to look at sort of the grand scheme of the division. I'm fine with that fight. So,
yeah. So if you look at the top, like 10 to 15, Hall is 14, Strickland's 11. And then you got Weidman's there. You got Shabazian, and then you got Tavares. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to fight Holland. Like you said, he's coming off back-to-back losses. Strickland is on upward. He's trying to go up the ranking. So Uriah Hall sitting at 8. That's a perfect fight. Actually, Hall shouldn't even took the Strickland fight. He should have been fighting someone else like Jack Hermanson, right? Why? It confuses me why Hall took this fight. Maybe I don't know. I don't know why.
Keep active. Well, Hermanson just fought, right? So
yeah.
Probably wanted some time off, but I think it's more of a keep busy fight because he didn't really get to do anything in that last fight as well. So there you go. What do we got here? What is your favorite tough season and who's your favorite tough alumni? For me, it's got to be the first season. That's what got me into the sport. Literally, I was what people used to call a tough noob. That's what got me into MMA. And favorite fighter, I mean, it's kind of gone back and forth. I was a big Chris Liebman fan. I don't know. I sort of felt sympathetic towards him because he had some issues, and then he was what sort of got me into it. So I'll stick with Chris Liebman. He was one of them. But I like Koscheck just to see what he went on to do. I mean, this was a wrestler, but he could always talk trash. He had that great post-fight speech after he beat Paul Daly, where he talked about the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to beat the Montreal Canadiens in the playoffs, which is near and dear to my heart as a hockey fan. So yeah, first season for me. What about you?
My favorite season is the heavyweight season with Rampage versus Rashad Evans. I feel like that season was the best season of all time. You had Kimbo and all the heavyweights in there. I think that's one of the only heavyweight seasons, but it was entertaining because of Rampage and Rashad going back and forth. My favorite alumni has to be Brendan Schaub. Same season. He's done so well for himself in this world of MMA. No, I'm just kidding. It's not Brendan Schaub. I don't know who's my favorite alumni. I don't.
You
There's
watched
so
the
many.
full season of The Ultimate Fighter?
The full season?
Have you watched the full season of The Ultimate Fighter? A full season?
Yeah, I watched that heavyweight season. Of course.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I've watched a couple full seasons. I'm not gonna lie and say I've watched a bunch. I watched a couple, but yes, half of them I just watched like the first couple episodes. I'm just like, oh man, this is not fun to watch. And if it's not fun to watch for us, that means like the regular person is probably not fun at all.
Yeah. Also, I didn't watch Tough last night. I PVR'd it. I'm going to check it out though when I get a chance. I was doing the show last night. I got other stuff. It's tough. I got to, again, all this MMA going on. I got to kind of calibrate it to my schedule, how it works out well.
I don't even know how to watch it, to be honest with you.
It's here in Canada. It's here on TSN. You might be able to watch it on Fight Pass. I'm not sure where you are. Yeah, that might be an option. We'll see. Prime Machida versus Prime Wonderboy. Who do you got?
Ooh.
I mean, I'd have to go Machida just because of the extra weight. Because Machida's used to fight it, or still fights at 205, right? Yeah. Wonderboy's a 170. I'll take the bigger guy all day.
Yeah. Machida was he was dynamic, man. He was incredible. But yeah, you got to if he got 20 pounds on you, you got to go with the bigger dude.
Darren Till versus Kevin Holland. Well, Darren Till's fighting Brunson, right?
Yes.
But again, you got to look at wins and losses. Yes, Till's coming off a loss, but Holland's coming off a couple losses. That makes no sense for Darren Till in terms of the rankings. Again, it would be a fun fight in terms of the trash talk, but you got to look at the rankings. That's what I say on there as well. Jose Flores, who's your favorite featherweight coming up?
Man,
it's probably going to be someone not in the rankings. Or maybe it is. Maybe I'll give an easier answer just because then I have it there at my disposal. Bryce Mitchell. There's my easy answer. I like Bryce. Big Bryce Mitchell fan. Should probably get an interview with him again soon. He's awesome. It's totally unique.
He's been MIA for a while, right?
And injury. Won't be back till the fall.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I think Giga is the one, man. I think.
But he shouldn't be calling out Holloway. Like, let's get real here.
Nah,
and that's his manager, obviously feeding him that, and being like,
of course,
say it, and you'll get in the news, and then TMZ will, write about it. So it's like I just, when I see that, I'm like, come on, dude, you beat Cub Swanson. Like, you got to work your way up like everyone else. So
you got to play the media, man. That's part of the game, I believe. So yeah, you're gonna call out Max, but of course Max is not gonna fight you, man. He's got too many other guys to worry about. But yeah, I think Giga, he's gonna get big fights eventually. I would like to see him fight Barboza, to be honest with you. I think that would be an incredible fight.
But again, Barboza, I don't think he doesn't deserve it. Barboza's no, I disagree. Like, I get what you're saying. He's exciting, and that was an A+ performance against Swanson. But you look at Barboza, arguably beat Ige. Just beat Shane Burgos, who's ranked pretty high. Barboza deserves like a top 5 guy, in my opinion, whereas Jiga's not there yet. One more win, we'll have that conversation. But beating a Cub Swanson, I don't know. Doesn't really.
But the big names don't want to fight Giga, though.
But how's that fair to a Barboza? Like, I asked him about that. I said, people have mentioned him as a name. He's like, no, I'm looking ahead, and I don't blame him.
I don't blame Barboza for looking ahead, but at the same time, one of these guys have to fight Giga, right? And if Calvin wasn't like going through what he's going through right now, I would think like Giga would be perfect, for him to fight. But at the same time, Barboza would be perfect for Calvin to fight too. Like, both of those guys fighting anybody ahead of them is great matchups. And I can't wait to see like who they match them up with. But yeah, Barboza doesn't got much time left, man. I think that they should shoot him up real fast. They should put him against somebody in that top 5. I agree.
While we have some time, keep the questions coming, by the way. We got about 10 minutes left on this stream. We're going to do our underdog picks for UFC Vegas 28, right. Which, you know what else is on this weekend? And it just totally like slipped my mind. And maybe it's just me. I just feel like there's not a lot of buzz about it. Mayweather's boxing Logan Paul this weekend. Like,
Yeah, on Sunday, right?
yeah, like, is it just me or does it feel like there's like not that much buzz for this fight? Like I barely heard a word about it. It seems like we're considering the two names involved. Like, and we've got a really like let's get real here. Pretty weak UFC card this weekend. I mean, there's some fun fights. We'll get into it a little bit, but I mean, I just feel like there's been no buzz about it at all. Like I didn't even know. Like I'm going camping this weekend. I'm not even like I'm gonna miss it. Otherwise, we should have done a live stream. Come to think of it, but I'm camping, so I won't be able to.
Yeah, there is no buzz. There's nothing. Like they had that like little press conference like scuffle thing, right? Like they were running around each other, chasing each other like they're at some playground where your kids play at with other kids, right? They were just
Yeah.
doing some weird like publicity stunt stuff. And then that's it. That's all we've heard about the fight, right? And yeah, I just noticed it yesterday. Like, oh man, it's this Sunday. I'm like, I don't think anybody cares.
Yeah, no, it's also weird that they're doing it on a Sunday. I'm not sure the reason for that, but yeah, so that's where we're at this point. Okay, so our underdog picks: Rozenstruik and Sakai going down this Saturday at the Apex in Las Vegas. I'll give you my pick first. I was a little bit surprised to see this guy's an underdog, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Then we'll get your underdog pick as well. Hopefully, we don't have the same one. I like Yusuf Zalal over Sean Woodson. I know Sean Woodson is a lot taller. I mean, he's always going to have that advantage over his opponents, but I just look at a couple things. You know, Zalal's lost his last fight. He's looking to get back in the win column. He's had, actually, I want to say, has he lost 2 in a row, Zalal? He has, I think, because he was undefeated, and then he lost to Topuria, who is, I mean, Topuria looks like the real deal in that division. He might even beat Ryan Hall coming up here. Lost to Seungwoo Choi. Granted, his wins are all, other than Lingo, are all against guys that aren't in the UFC anymore. But I don't know. I think Zalal, there's still a good ceiling there. Woodson, same deal. A lot of hype behind him at Glory MMA. But I just don't think has really shown us much. And I think he's, you know, I think he's kind of this sort of, I don't know, work in progress prospect. Like I know what the UFC is doing here. And by the way, they also have the same manager, which is interesting. So I'm sure that was sort of part of the reason they're putting them together. But Zalal at 155, I'll take him. I think he's better on paper. And I think he'll be able to deal with the height and reach. What do you think?
No, I think Woodson's gonna take him.
Okay.
But I like both guys though. I've
Mhm.
interviewed both guys multiple times. Both guys are great guys, you know, very respectful guys, young talents in the division. But yeah, I feel like the length is gonna be a problem for him. You know, I know that Youssef he sparred with like light heavyweights just to get used to the size, but once you get in there with Sean Woodson, I think he's just awkward, you know what I mean, and just too big. And I think that he's just gonna be able to, you know, go in there and implement the game plan that he needs to. And you know what? He didn't even train at Glory. That could be something too, right?
He didn't. Where was he training for this camp?
He was training at his original gym because of James Krause's connection to
Oh, you know, I brought that
Factory
up
X.
in the preview show. I was wondering if Krause is going to stay out because he does spend some time at Factory X. Well, that's interesting. Well, there's another reason to like him. I mean, you're not even getting the best, one of the, and Woodson's coming up. Woodson hasn't fought since that loss to Julian Erosa, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's something. There's something to what you're saying right
There you go.
right?
So there you go. There's my underdog pick. By the way, I can't remember we've been keeping track of who our picks were. We had the card 2 weeks ago, so I'd have to go back and look who I picked there. By the way, I got to get my picks in. I will. That's on my. You know what? I'm going to make a note on my phone right now to make my picks because I always forget, even though it's the best app in the game right now. So I'm putting it down there now. I won't forget before I go camping tomorrow evening. What else? Who do you like this week for your underdog pick?
Well, I'm gonna take Marcin Tybura, man. He's minus 165 on the app. I think he's a decent underdog pick against Walt Harris. Walt Harris, I've seen him that he's in Vegas. I think he's at Extreme Couture training and taking advantage of the PI and everything like that. But man, Walt Harris hasn't looked the same, you know, since.
Sorry to cut you off there, but Tybura is the favorite, right? So you
Is he?
an underdog. Yeah, he is. He minus 165. You literally just said that too. It's all good. Yeah, no worries.
My bad. All right, I'll take a real underdog. No, sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Dang, there is no underdogs here to pick, man. Like you picked the best underdog so far.
You can take the underdog I took as well. I mean, there's a few here I'm looking at. Actually, I like Walt in that fight against Marcin because I feel like Walt is, you know, I think he's at a better camp now. I think like being an extreme, he's getting to work with really good guys. And you look at who he's losing to, Volkov and over him. I mean, those are two of the best guys in the division. Tybura's got a nice winning streak, but over who? Like, you know, nothing. You look at the level of competition here.
Yeah.
You know, you look at who Tybura's fought: Rothwell, Greg Hardy, Maxine Grisham, Spivak. These are all sort of lower level guys. Walt's losing to the best, and Walt almost beat over him, right? He almost finished him in that first round.
That's right,
so.
in that first round. Yeah,
I know he's older, and I know
yeah.
typically, yeah. So,
Walt would be the underdog pick. You're right. Walt would be the underdog pick to take. I don't know. My brain is mush today, but
no worries.
Yeah,
It's the end of the day for you, by the way.
It's also another underdog pick. Even though I like Tanner Bozer in the fight, I feel like Latifi could be a good underdog pick.
If you
in
can get
that.
him down, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Exactly. Or he could just throw haymakers, from the start, and maybe one of those lands. But I think Tanner's going to go out there a little bit smarter than he did last time and take this win. But yeah,
One more I'll throw at you as a potential underdog. I'm not going to make this my official pick, but I really think that we could see something here with Ponzinibbio, right? Like he looked so bad in his last fight. There's a layoff, there's some injuries, there's a lot of things, and he's older. I mean, on paper though, Ponzinibbio does look like the better fighter than Beza. Beza is another guy who hasn't fought a lot of good competition. He beat Matt Brown, right? Like Matt Brown's close to retirement. So I do think there's a spot for him to maybe pull an upset as well. He's only a slight underdog, but if you're betting this fight, I would say Ponzinibbio is the way to go. I did pick Beza. I think he probably does win, but I mean, a plus, or no, it's minus 100. Well, okay, he opened at plus 115. Keep an eye on that line. If he gets the plus money, might be worth a stab here at Ponzinibbio as well. So there we go. All right, let's get back to some more questions. We got about 5 minutes left, and then we'll plug some stuff here at the end. What do you think? What do you guys think will be the best fight this weekend? I think it will be what fight here? I'll go Alan Patrick and Mason Jones. That looks like a fun fight.
Yeah, that's going to be good.
Or Todorovic and Rodriguez will be good too.
I think Trinaldo versus Sakalov, Muslim Sakalov, those guys.
That one too. That's a really good one.
This card, it doesn't look like something that's special on paper, but a lot of these matchups has a potential to be just like fight of the nights where they're just going out there and just killing each other, right? Even like Beza versus Ponzinibbio, right? Even that fight, those guys both have knockout power, so it could be fun.
Roman says, how do you think a prime Lesnar would do against Stipe? By the way, before I answer that, Roman, did get in touch with Rakic's management this week. We're working on something. Might be getting an interview with him. So just letting you know about that, because you always ask me. He's a big Rakic fan. So I'm working on it right now. We'll just see if it works out. But time's running out this week because I only can do interviews today and tomorrow. And then I'm not back till Monday next week. So we'll figure something out. Anyways, who would win prime Lesnar or prime Stipe? Prime Lesnar, here's the thing you got to remember about him. He's just so big and so strong that I don't think it even matters. Like, I know Stipe's a big guy, but I've seen both in person, right? I mean, Lesnar's obviously like bigger, wider. Stipe's taller. Like Stipe looks like an NBA player. So when would we say Stipe's probably in his prime when he beats Verdum, right? That's probably the prime of where he's at. I mean, you could even say after that because he's won out. He didn't lose the title after that. Actually, he lost to Cormier. I go Lesnar. Maybe. I know I'm going to get people saying, oh, you don't know anything about the sport, but like just the sheer physicality of this guy. Like, remember Shane Carwin almost had Lesnar in trouble and Lesnar was able to persevere and beat him? Like, that Brock Lesnar is a scary Brock Lesnar. Like, I don't know who beats that Brock Lesnar.
No, I think Stipe does. I think Stipe wins that fight. I think Stipe, just like how Kane beat up Lesnar, I think Stipe would probably do.
But he wasn't in his prime because Lesnar had the health issues. Remember, he lost to Kane and then he stepped away.
Yeah.
Or he fought over him and then stepped away.
But also Lesnar was taking steroids the whole time too. You know what I mean? So you got to factor that in, right? So if we put Stipe on steroids versus Lesnar on steroids, who would take it? I'd pick Stipe still on steroids.
James in the chat says, what do you think the UFC will do with Cody? I think you mean Garbrandt. He's
the audio went out on your side. Yeah, so I still can't hear you. I wonder what happened. Mixed wires. But yeah, with Cody, I think what will the UFC do with Cody? I think Cody takes some time off and comes back, man, with all the COVID symptoms and everything that was going on with him. I think that's the best move, and he should come back at bantamweight. I don't know if he should go to flyweight, to be honest with you. I don't think that's a good idea to cut that extra 10 pounds. I think he should stay at bantamweight and continue, his run at bantamweight. I mean, he was the champ, so why not go back and try to make that run one more time, man. He's only lost to the best fighters in the division.
I'm back. I don't know what happened. StreamYard now and then messes around where it mutes my mic or something. I'm not sure.
All right. Next question. What we got?
Yeah, let's get to the next question. We'll get like 2 more questions here. We're running out of time here. We got to plug stuff at the end. We'll get to this one. Dana said no one is willing to be the backup for Poirier McGregor. So what's going to happen with Justin? I don't know. Why wouldn't you want to be the backup just in case you get a rematch against Poirier? You could potentially fight McGregor. Why would you not want that? Unless he's got another opponent in mind. I'm not sure.
That doesn't make any sense. Nobody wants to be the backup. Come
Yeah, I know.
on. That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, is that just Dana just being Dana with his rumors and stuff? Like, I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah. What else? And we'll get to one more here. Let's see. Who's beating Thug Rose? We'll end on that as well.
Mhm.
I think Whaley has the ability to beat Rose. I just don't know when that will happen. Like, by the way, gotta mention this. Ioane and Jacek. Come on. Carla doesn't deserve the title shot. She has a win over Rose. She just beat the brakes off Hyon. She absolutely deserves the title shot. Joanna's got to, like, I get where she's coming from, right? Like, I think this is my theory on Ioane and Jacek, and I like her, by the way. She's a great champion. I mean, is literally the queen of the strawweight division. She's the one that put it on the map when the division came in. She's a great champion. So I'm not disrespecting any of that. I think when she lost her title and was unable to get it back, she was not used to getting those paychecks. She's kind of like, well, what's my worth? And now she just thinks there's sort of, because she was champ, there's a certain expectation as to who she could get. She doesn't deserve the title fight. She's lost. The girl who has the title has beat her twice decisively.
Mhm.
And like, you're not wanting to fight a Marina Rodriguez. Like, you can't be like, you can't pick and choose here. Otherwise, go to flyweight. You win one fight there, you might get a rematch against Valentina. That's what Andrade did. I think that would be a better bet. But this idea that she thinks she deserves a shot or whatever, come on. We gotta be realistic here.
I don't know who beats Thug Rose. You know what I mean? Thug Rose seems like she's becoming unstoppable in some ways, but there's always going to be someone comes up. Like you said, Wei Lee has a good chance. If Tatiana Suarez stays at strawweight and she gets a couple more fights in just to get that experience and then face Rose, she could have a good chance. But I saw Tatiana Suarez is going to go up to flyweight. Is
Yeah,
that true?
she mentioned that. Yeah, she was actually on our show initially and mentioned that, and then everyone picked up Ariel's interview, which happens, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, no, she talked about it because she's been off for a while. It's tougher for her to cut weight. She'll do good at both weight classes. She's great.
I like her. I like her at flyweight. That's
yeah,
good.
she's going to be a problem. She's a very, very, very good fighter. Okay, I do want to get one more thing before we get out of here. I know we're running late here. Producer Michael, thanks for bearing with us here. Woodley and Paul, we got to talk about that. I gave my thoughts. I did 2 videos on this on my channel. I'm also going to have a video out later on why I think Jake Paul can beat Woodley, because I've been getting a lot of hate. I had some guy on Instagram like threaten me, like, dude, how can you call yourself a journalist? You're picking Jake Paul. I'll have a video and I'll explain why I think he can win. But John, your initial thoughts on the fight and who do you think wins? What's your early pick?
I love the fight, man. The fight is incredible. You know, Woodley's going to get a big paycheck, and, you know, he's doing what every other UFC fighter wants to do right now, is to go over and box and make a lot of money. What's not to like about it? You know what I mean? Everybody's going to cover it. It's great for the combat sports world. And Jake Paul, you got to put some respect on his name, man. Like, he signed a contract to fight Tyron Woodley. Like, that's something that I think a lot of people didn't expect to happen, and he did it. And I believe in the contract he has a rematch clause if he loses, which means he's willing to take 2 beatings from Tyron Woodley, right? So you know, but early pick, man, it's hard to say. But man, if you're talking about pure boxing, we've seen what Jake Paul can do in boxing, and he boxes.
Yeah,
Trains boxing 24 hours a day. I'm going to take Jake Paul in this fight. And
there we go. There we go. Finally,
And
I've been getting into it with people the other day. I just want to point one thing out. And this is sort of the short version of what the video is going to say. People act like Woodley is the same Woodley that knocked out Robbie Lawler. That Woodley does not exist. We've been through it. We've done previews of his fights. He's not the same Woodley. Go watch that Vicente Luque fight. And I know Luque is, you know, a good fighter and he's probably underrated. He's probably a dark horse if you want to talk about dark horses. But the Woodley that knocked out Robbie Lawler in 2016, by the way, I mean, that's how long ago. That time, Conor McGregor had 1 loss in the UFC, and it was to Nate earlier that year. That's how long ago it was that Woodley knocked out Lawler. That's how long ago it was. That Woodley does not exist. He doesn't exist. So that's all I'm saying. And all the respect to Woodley for taking this, by the way.
I just think with the bigger gloves and with the shoes and like Jake Paul will be able to weather the storm early against Woodley, because you know Woodley's going to throw some hammers right at him early. Yeah. So if he can weather the storm with the boxing and he's going to learn the defense, right? He's a boxer. I think he gets past that, he could piece up Woodley in later rounds, man. I don't think it's going to end early or nothing like that, but he has a good chance of beating Woodley, man, and that just only makes him an even bigger star. Showtime knows what they're doing, man, with these matchups too.
They certainly do. And you guys know what's going on because you're watching the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in here. Big shout out to producer Michael, my favorite producer in the industry. I'll say that. I know my other podcast producers will get upset, but it's true. He's the best. And he looks like Vicente Luque, which is a bonus. JHK, what do you got coming up this week? Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
This week I have a bunch of interviews. I just don't want to say who they are because, like I said before, I don't want to jinx any of them. But I do have a couple good interviews up right now. I have Mason Jones. He's fighting this weekend, a highly touted fighter out of the UK. And he had that incredible fight with Mike Davis in his debut. He's looking for redemption in his second fight. I got an interview with the Korean Superboy, something that is very rare.
Yeah, great job on that, by the way.
Out. A lot of stuff covered with that. I got an interview with Kyung-Ho Kang, another interview that's very rare too. Casey O'Neill, and then a bunch of interviews for Ryzen coming up. I did 15 of the 16 bantamweight Grand Prix participants, so you could go check those out on my channel.
At Lynch on Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Got a big interview coming out tomorrow with a guy that I've been trying to get for months. If it all goes well, I'm not going to mention who it is. I'll be very happy if this one goes through. Other than that, ton of interviews today and tomorrow. I'm going camping this weekend. We'll be catching up on everything on Sunday. Hit that like button on this video. Hit the subscribe button. Download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. I'm James Lynch, for producer Michael, for JHK, for myself. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you a week today. Have a good one.
Peace.